afternoon, good morning. This public hearing conducted by the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudications will now come to order. Notice of this public hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets via electronic format on Thursday, June the 29th, with a second notice provided on July the 14th. Notice of the hearing was also made on the Guam Legislature's website. Today, the Committee on Appropriations has set aside 3 separate time slots for hearing on this one bill. We will have one hearing this morning at 9 o'clock. I'll have a second hearing at 2 o'clock this afternoon and a third hearing at 6 o'clock. It's to allow the general public ample opportunity to come and speak on the bill. There's only one bill that's being heard today at all 3 hearings. It's bill number 20-34. As corrected by the sponsor, just myself, an act to repeal and reenact Section 3105 of Article 1, Chapter 3 of Title 22, Guam Code Annotated, relative to responsibly raising the minimum wage. The bill reads very simply, Section 3105, minimum wage. Every employer shall pay each person employed by him wages at a rate not less than $9.20 per hour, effective October the 1st, 2017, and $10.10 per hour, effective October the 1st, 2018. As a sponsor, the reason the bill was introduced was to finish what we started 3 years ago. Because I believe that no one who works full-time job should have to live in poverty. Our office has done some research and determined that there are 34,000 people on Guam who have completed a bachelor's degree, a graduate degree, or vocational training. Nearly half of Guam's entire private sector workforce still makes less than $10.10 an hour. So it's not an issue of education with the 65,000 people that are working. Bill 20 finishes what we started in 2014, but was ultimately interrupted by a delayed economic impact statement. What did that economic impact statement demanded by our opponents say? According to the Guam study, Guam's gross domestic product increased. That's on page 21. The workforce expanded on page 22 of the study, and the inflation rate declined on page 22. The apocalypse that was predicted did not occur. There are some disagreements, and we'll address that this afternoon at this afternoon's hearing. At this time, we have 2 individuals who have woken up at this early hour to testify, Mr. Kendley Ongaro and Mr. Joseph Bradley. I want to thank Senator Mike Nicholas for joining me this morning. Mr. Ongaro, you may proceed.
Thank you very much. The attendance here today is pretty much what I expected. And the reason I am testifying today is because so many people have come up to me and expressed that they wish that I would testify. And when I flipped it back to them, well, it would have more impact if you would testify, because you're the person that it affects. And they all expressed fear. They were afraid if they are seen testifying before the legislature in favor of increasing minimum wages, they would probably be fired. And because of the lack of job development in this community, the lack of jobs, the high unemployment rate, Their fears are justified because it is very difficult for young people entering into the workforce to get jobs. It is very difficult for people in entry-level or service positions to transfer to other companies, especially if they're going to have a black mark against their name as one of those in charge of higher compensation. Everybody in this room probably has family members who have left the island seeking employment that they couldn't get here on Guam. And I am no exception. I have a number of members of my family who have left the island and are working in other states. So the reason I'm here to testify today is the importance of quality of life. Quality of life is what is going to keep our children here. But until we improve the quality of the work life, people are going to continue to be the #1 export for the island of Guam. So, in order for you, elected representatives, to get a true picture of what is happening in this community, I encourage each and every one of you to get out from behind this desk, get out of your office, and go out and talk to young people one-on-one, because you will get answers to the types of questions that I'm going to talk about now. For the past number of years, Guam has had a rapid increase in the cost of living. The cost of living has, over the last few years, has gone up well over 30%. And for years, the excuse was the price of oil. Well, since 2014, the price of oil has dropped below $60 a barrel, and right now it's bouncing under $50 a barrel. So that doesn't hold water anymore. But what I find interesting is we didn't see any prices go down when the price of oil went down, with the possible exception of gas, and it didn't go down by very much. It certainly didn't go down by over 30%. So I just was in the mainland recently, and I have a favorite bread I like. Now, we were going to a picnic in a park, and in San Francisco, I bought that loaf of bread for $3.29 in San Francisco. Now, that retailer, you know, is making a profit at $3.29. A year ago here on Guam, that loaf of bread was $4.25. It is now $6.25, up 47%. A dozen eggs a year ago that were $1.39 are now $1.99, up 43%. Bear in mind, we're just talking the past year. A bottle of domestic water, filtered water, that was a year ago 89 cents is now $1.10, a 24% increase. Salad bar that was $9.90 last year is now $13.99, up 40%. A cup of fast food coffee that was 99 cents a year ago, senior coffee by the way, is now $1.49, up 50%. A fast food meal that was $6.25 a year ago is now $7.99, up 27%. A large movie popcorn that was $5.25 a year ago is now $7.99, up 52%. An oil change that a year ago was $49. Now bear in mind the price of oil has dropped almost $10 in the past year, is now $69, up 41%. A year ago tires were $195. God, I wish they were $1.95. Now they're $265, up 36%, and I know because I just bought 4. I could run through my entire shopping list with similar results, so you can't tell me that all those price increases over 2016 occurred as a result of the minimum wage increase in 2015. The same rapid increases we're seeing in goods, we're also seeing in housing. Apartments that a couple of years ago used to rent for $650 are now renting for $1,000, up 54%. The situation is only getting worse. A friend of mine who has a duplex, he was renting the duplex out for $750 a month and discovered that by making some changes, namely adding split units and a garbage disposal and making sure that the toilets are the adult 17-inch high instead of the children 10-inch high qualifies for DOD subsidy. So he is making those changes to his duplex, and will be renting the units out for $1,750 a month. Another friend of mine who was renting a house for $1,000 a month is making similar changes and will be renting it for $1,800 a month. Where are our young families just starting out going to live? How are they going to be able to afford to rent houses and have a quality life here on Guam? Well, I got an answer for that. One of two ways. They're either going to leave the island, which a number of them have, or we are seeing here on Guam a rising trend in multi-generational residences, and I am one of them. My son and future daughter-in-law both work, but even with their combined incomes, they can't afford to rent a house and have the quality of life that they want unless they leave the island. Me, hoping to have grandchildren, I'm trying to do my best to keep them there, so that's why we have a multi-generational house. 5 of my 10 closest associates are in the same situation, and I'm sure many of you up there, or if not, will soon be in the situation where you're multi-generational in the residence. So where are our children going? I'll tell you, just within my family and circle of friends, our children are going to California, Washington, North Carolina, and Texas. They are moving there because there they can get the quality of life, they can get a higher income in those states and with a lower cost of living. And that's because the cost of living on Guam for the past few years has increased dramatically. The living wages have not. So as a community advocate, I've been talking to a lot of people on a number of issues, but inevitably it comes down to quality of life, cost of living. So I'm going to just share 2 stories with you because it's relevant. One of the stories is a young woman, single mom. She's working in a medical office, and she was very embarrassed to tell me that she is getting food stamps, Medicaid, and Section 8. If she were working in Mississippi, which is the lowest rank on every metric you could imagine, she would be making $12.10 an hour with no benefits. In Texas, she would be earning $12.75 an hour with no benefits. And if she were in Hawaii, she would be making $14.10 an hour with benefits. So when I asked her what a $1 increase in her salary does for her, without hesitation, she told me she could tell her parents they don't need to pay her power bill and cell phone bill any longer. There's a young man I met who is a graduate of the Guam Trades Academy. He's been working in construction for 3 years at $9 an hour with no benefits. He's a proud man, and he works hard to support his family. So to avoid going on welfare, he works 3 jobs. I met him at his night job in the food service industry, and on weekends he installs and repairs air conditioners under the table. When I asked him what a $1 increase in his wage would mean for him, he told me that he would quit working weekends and spend time with his young family. So when I ask people who own businesses, why don't they pay more or offer benefits, they all tell me they would like to pay more, they would like to offer benefits, but if they did, they would lose business or go out of business because their competitors will not raise payroll or offer benefits. So to that argument, I offer this. A rising tide lifts all boats. When we raise the minimum wage for one, we raise it for everybody, and that eliminates the first argument. We can't increase what we pay because we'll lose business or go out of business. Now, in Hawaii in the 70s, they instituted mandatory benefit package across the board. If you have a business in Hawaii that employs 5 or more people, you have to pay, and now bear in mind, I've not been in Hawaii for 20 years. I don't know what it is now, but for the 12 years I was in business in Hawaii, if a business had 5 or more employees, they had to provide a medical benefit package equal to HMSA Plan 4 or the cash equivalent. Therefore, Hawaii has the highest insured rate in the nation, which would address a lot of the problems we're facing here on Guam. But I digress. I lived in Hawaii for 12 years and saw firsthand the destruction in the social fabric of an island that takes place when the cost of living rapidly escalates far beyond the ability of the cost in wages to absorb. Most of the people I know in Hawaii, their children and grandchildren live in the mainland and will never be returning. And we're seeing the same thing happen here in Guam. Now, across the nation, there are studies showing that millennials are staying at home longer, marrying later, and having few children and having them later in life, due in part to the financial insecurity they feel. And the situation here on Guam is no different. That is one of the reasons why over the past couple of years, 21 states have raised minimum wage levels. 19 states have raised their minimum wage levels higher than what we're proposing here in Guam. And all of them, except for Hawaii, have a lower cost of living to begin with. 40 cities have also raised their minimum wage or are raising minimum wages inside city limits. All of those cities have populations larger than Guam, and with the exception of San Diego and San Francisco, they have a lower cost of living than we have here on Guam. Now, we have a couple of things that make us different than Hawaii. To begin with, we have a stable population. When you look at the census data from 1990 to 2000 to 2010, it is less than 10,000 fluctuation. So we don't have the problem they have in Hawaii where they have 10,000 people a year relocating to live the Hawaiian dream. What we do have is the DOD and their off-base housing subsidy allowance, but that is not going to have the same kind of impact on the rental market that having 10,000 people a year move to the island would do. We also don't have a diversified economy. We don't have an economy that attracts skilled professional workers to Guam. We don't have a tech or manufacturing economy that attracts technical workers to Guam. And because of the differences in the high cost of living here on Guam, we couldn't even attract unemployed construction workers from the United States when the construction market collapsed between 2008 and 2014. We couldn't get them to come over here just because of the difference between the cost of living and the wage structure. So even though there will be minimum wage increases are passed through costs to businesses, the business owners are not going to be paying these costs out of their own pocket. The consumers are the ones that are going to be paying the cost. And the nice thing about this is with the minimum wage increase, it will increase tax collections across the board, which will help government of Guam's revenue problem. It would have been interesting if the study had cited how much tax collections had gone up after that, the 2015 increase. Did it show that at all? Okay. Along with that increase, we would see an increase in local purchasing because people at the minimum wage level, what they do with their increases is they spend it all. They don't save it. They spend it all in the local economy. Whereas a wage increase to somebody in the mid-level or upper tier, they either save it or they buy online. Now, this low living wage is having an unintended consequence on our business community. One of the things a number of people have shown me when I ask them how they survive, they are buying their groceries online and at Walmart and now at Amazon. And I couldn't believe it. I went online. I placed my first order the other day. I bought $100 worth of groceries. I'm paying $6 shipping fee. And if I took that $100 basket, and I'll just give you one item, the pasta I bought for 97 cents, I paid $2.69 for at a local retailer here. So one of the unintended consequences of poverty level living is that our young people are smart and they are looking for ways to survive, and we're going to see the impact at the low end of the economy that we're seeing at the upper end on the retail trade. Because when you look now, the #1 retailer on Guam is Amazon. You go to any office building, when the mail truck comes, and what's coming on the mail truck? The guys don't carry the bags anymore with letters going from floor to floor. They're pulling parts of boxes marked Amazon, Best Buy, Office Depot. Well, now we're pushing that down to the lower income level where people are looking to survive, because I can buy pet food, I can buy toilet paper, I can buy all kinds of dry goods, canned goods, bottled goods, and even packaged goods, because the loaf of bread that I now pay $6.25 for at a local retailer, I can buy online at $2.79, minimum quantity 5. So this is going to have an impact that we haven't felt yet until such time as we start collecting the sales taxes on online sales. But I get away from it. Seattle, they just recently had a wage increase that went into effect. And they did an exhaustive study on it. Did some people lose hours? Yes. Did some people lose jobs? Yes. Did some businesses close? Yes. But the total number of unemployed people is down. In 2016, when the increase took effect, the unemployment rate was 6.7%. 1 year later, the unemployment rate was 2.6%. And every other metric that you would measure, such as sales and things like that, was up. Now, National Public Radio did a radio piece on Seattle because the Seattle-King County Economic Development Council issued a report. I've been trying to get a copy of that report, but the anecdotal story I remember is they selected 10 businesses at random from the list that closed down during that time period, and the conclusion was that those businesses would have closed down anyway, minimum wage increase or not. And they highlighted a couple of examples and interviewed the owners. So most of the states that have increased minimum wages are reporting similar results to the Seattle experience. Here on Guam, we saw a decrease in the welfare rolls of over 3,000 people and 1,000 new jobs created. So the doom and gloom that was rampant through the media at the time this bill was first proposed back in 2014 failed to come about. I'm willing to admit there are some small downsides to the increase, but I don't see the tourist or restaurant industries cutting back on employment or hours during a time of rising visitor counts. I don't see the construction industry cutting back employment at a time when there is a backlog of construction projects, and that backlog is growing. And just recently we saw where the Milcom contracts for Guam got a big thumbs up. The only problem I see that needs to be addressed in this issue is long-term multi-year contracts that base their bids on the minimum wage structure that was in place at the time, such as the companies that do the food service for Department of Education, the prison, and the senior meals program to public health, and the companies that have multi-year custodial contracts like at the airport and Department of Education. I'm sure there are some other contracting situations that will need to be addressed and can be addressed. But the one issue besides, based on the conversations, that I feel is most important about this bill will be that increasing the minimum wage will reduce the exodus rate of young people leaving our community forever seeking a better quality of life.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leon-Guerrero. Mr. Bradley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to read one paragraph from my cover letter and then read the testimony into the record. You'll note that my testimony is neither in support of nor opposition to the subject bill. My intention is to provide my input as a private citizen and a professional economist in the hope of assisting the committee and the legislature in making informed decisions regarding Bill 20-34. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I thank you for your invitation to provide testimony regarding Bill 20-34. My name is Joe Bradley. For those of you who heard or read my testimony on similar legislation 14 months ago, that would be Bill 312-33, as well as more than 3 years ago on the bill underlying Guam's current minimum wage, Bill 316-32, which was signed into law as Public Law 32-178. Not a lot has changed in the fundamental relationships among wages, employment, and prices during the intervening period, so I won't belabor the points that I made on those two previous occasions. Bill 20-34 is brief, as so shall be my testimony. As I am not in a policy-making position, I will not presume to advise whether raising the minimum wage in Guam, as is proposed by this legislation, would or would not be of net benefit to our community. That is a decision that I must defer to our policymakers. I will, though, register two concerns regarding the bill before you. First, I note that the repeal of existing Section 3105, Article 1, Chapter 3, GCA, there is a possibility that some employers would revert to the federal minimum wage between the date of enactment into law and the effective date of the new Section 3105, October 1st, 2017. Although such action would probably be rare if it were to occur at all, I wonder whether this might be an unintended consequence of Bill 20-34. I can suggest three possible remedies to mitigate the risk of such actions. First, rather than repealing and reenacting the existing section, that section could be amended to add the language of the proposed reenactment. Second, the existing 3105 could be repealed and replaced upon a specific date, such as October 1st, 2017. Third, a Section 2 could be added to the bill, making the resulting law effective October 1st, 2017. Any of those would remedy the possibility of a reversion to the national minimum wage in the interim. Second, I will echo a concern of many businesses in our community, especially those in the hospitality and food service industries. Under existing federal law and regulations, a distinction is made between employees in service positions in which tipping is customary and personnel in all other positions, and a lower minimum wage rate is applied to those in tipped positions. Currently, the federal minimum wage rate is $7.25 an hour, but a substantially lower wage rate of $2.13 per hour is applied to tipped positions. If a tipped employee's income from tips is not sufficient to cover the gap between $2.13 and $7.25, the employer is required to make up the difference. The matter of tip positions was not addressed in Public Law 32-178, which raised Guam's minimum wage rate for all positions to $8.25 per hour effective January 1st, 2015. This led to a substantial increase in labor costs for many service sector employers, as well as a substantial increase in income to those employees in tipped positions. It is also likely to have distorted the allocation of labor resources at the lower end of the income spectrum, as more low-income workers gravitated toward tipped positions. If these results are intended to continue, so be it. If not, though, it may be reasonable to address this market distortion in this or some future legislation. I will leave the other minimum wage-related issues of crime, family violence, financial catastrophe, welfare dependency, educational achievement, and innumerable other aspects of the social and economic effects to others who have greater expertise in those subjects, should they choose to express their views. For my part, I hope that my concerns that I have raised in this testimony will be considered by the committee, its members, and the legislative body as a whole for your deliberations over Bill 20-34.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley, and thank you for pointing out that possible unintended consequence. And though I introduced this bill back in
March 1st.
March, we haven't had a hearing because I have been waiting for discussions with the Hotel and Restaurant Association and the Chamber of Commerce to come up with the possibility of a tip wage, and I guess they're coming at 2 o'clock to testify on that very issue. So we may have another hearing with a tip credit issue in it That we'll see. But that hasn't been presented to us, and I've been waiting for it. Mr. Leon Guerrero, I thank you very much for the research that you've done, comparing prices, and your Amazon shopping. I'm going to have to look at that now that I've redone my password. I appreciate both of your testimonies, and I'll allow Senator Mike, then Senator San Augustine, then Senator James Espaldon to ask questions. I have no questions. I'm just very happy that the two of you testified on the bill, and appreciate everything that you provided to us that we need to look at. The increase in prices over the year, and your suggestion about the unintended consequence and the tip wage. That was easy. I guess this committee will continue to accept written testimony on this matter for the next 10 days. Please provide written testimonies to the Office of Speaker Benjamin B.J.F. Cruz, Guam Congress Building, 163 Chalon Center Papa, Hagåtña, Guam 96910. They can also be sent via email to senator@senatorbjcruz.com. As I stated, we will go into recess at this point. The committee will recess until 2 o'clock this afternoon, when we will continue to receive testimony. And also for the listening public, we will be available also this evening at 6 o'clock to receive testimony if they want to come down. Okay? So thank you very much, and we are in recess.